anything else?
Thank you, everyone.
This was really great. Thank you so much. Well, I'm going to turn it over to Teresa Crawford at this point, when I think that with her presentation, since it is very much related to the case, some more ideas and issues will come up. We've invited Teresa to join us. She's part of the Counterpart International team, and she's the executive director of our unit or department called the Social Sector Accelerator, and works very closely with funders in a variety of capacities. So I'll let Teresa explain a little bit more about what they do, and then and go ahead with her presentation, and then as questions come up, we'll go from there. Teresa?
Hi, ladies. It's great to meet all of you, and I've been hearing your stories since the Women Lead team joined Counterpart, and so it's great to see the faces put to the names. So as Jen said, I run the Social Sector Accelerator, which is a subsidiary of Counterpart. And we were formed a couple of years ago to take a lot of the work that Counterpart had been doing over the last 50 years and work with new partners and different partners, specifically focused on getting more investment into the nonprofit and social sector, and helping grant makers just be better partners and improve their grant making practice in a way that was more equitable and more just and more supportive of nonprofit organizations around the world. So what I'm going to share with you today is some of the research and work that we've been doing, particularly around COVID-19, and working with grant makers both in the US and internationally, who are adapting their grant making and adapting their practice. So I'm going to share with you a little bit of that research and findings, and how I think that civil society organizations kind of use that information to better advocate for what they need from donors these days. So I'm going to turn on my screen here in 1 second, and I'm going to share some slides with you, but I need Jen to give me, or Noor to give me permission.
I think, let me see.
Because I think, yeah, there we go. Now I've got it.
I just did it. Sorry about that. Go ahead.
No problem. So can I get a thumbs up if people can see these slides? Awesome. That's great. Thank you. So I'm going to switch over to slideshow. So, you know, as I said, the accelerator works directly with grant makers. So these are some photos of the grant makers we work with around their strategy and their practice of grant making. We're a small team that's distributed around the world. So you can see Noor in the picture here, who's been supporting these calls, along with a colleague, Leo, and another colleague, Emily. So one of the things that we've been doing is sort of looking at the global landscape for philanthropy and foundations and donors. And there have been two very supportive and progressive movements within the philanthropic community that a lot of foundations are sort of taking their cues, and donors are taking their cues from these two movements. And the first is a pledge and a call to action from the Council on Foundations, asking foundations and supporting foundations to be more adaptive and flexible in their funding. So everything from, you know, changing deadlines to allowing for changes in deliverables or in objectives, to unrestricting grants, you know, prioritizing the safety and security and the long-term health of the organizations that they support, and really encouraging foundations to reach out to their grantees and be proactive about being flexible and just checking in on the grantees they support. So right now it's up to about 630 foundations have signed on to this call to action. And Noor has shared in the drive, and she can share in the chat this call to action from them. And it's a really good tool to be able to use when you're, advocating with a donor or a partner to say, hey, that you're not alone. Other foundations are being flexible and being supportive, and here's the evidence of that. Here's this call to action of over 630 donors who are changing their practice right now. At the same time, there's been a great movement led by Civicus, which I'm sure some of you know of Civicus and their work, based in Johannesburg, the largest civil society advocacy network in the world. And they've written an open letter to donors and supporters with recommendations about how to be supportive of civil society during this time. So again, they're also talking about safety and security, around protecting civic space, around not just thinking about the short-term emergency response, but also the recovery period and the whole reimagining opportunity that exists, because this is a pandemic that is affecting everybody around the world in many different ways, and it's an opportunity to be creative and find new ways to respond and then to recover. So organizations, we're strongly encouraging civil society organizations to use these two calls to action and messages when they're having conversations with their donors, with their governments, and with their partners, to just really talk about sort of what's the movement behind supporting more flexible and responsive grant making. So that's kind of the big picture, of what we're seeing amongst the foundation community. Now, we all know, right, that the donors that we work with, it's not a monolith. They don't all look exactly the same. And that what we've broken down is into some different subcategories of donors. And we'll talk a little bit about how different donors are responding right now. So individual donors are often the most likely to be willing to shift and support activities as long as the beneficiaries are generally the same. So we talked about this a little bit in the case. If it's the women that the group was going to be working with anyways with their normal programming, and those women now have new needs, individual donors are often the ones that are quite flexible to say, use our money to meet these new needs, because it's the beneficiaries, those individual women that we care about, and we understand that your livelihoods work or your GBV work or whatever work you were doing with them, that they may have different needs now. So use our money to support them. Private and family foundations are also quite likely to be very supportive of shifts in activity related to the same community of people or the same group of beneficiaries. But they're also, we're finding, the most likely to be willing to either completely unrestrict or loosen restrictions on a grant, because for that foundation, it's very important to them to see the nonprofit organization survive. So if there's problems, doing any activities because of lockdowns or wanting to keep staff safe, often private and family foundations are the ones you can go to and say, look, we can't do anything right now. We need to keep our staff safe. We need to pay salaries, pay our rent. And quite often those kinds of donors are willing to unrestrict their grants and make that possible. Governments, we're seeing in some cases, governments are taking money that they had originally budgeted for development projects and switching it to response, which is causing a lot of challenges for organizations. If you have existing relationships with government, sometimes you become then the group that helps with that response, sort of mobilizes your staff and your organization, so you don't lose out entirely on the funds. But this government can be particularly challenging because they can say, tomorrow this money needs to go for response and we can't do this development work anymore. Interestingly, and I think several of you gave examples of this, business and corporate foundations, they're the ones that are often quite flexible to say, let's pause or postpone, activities. Let's do them in a couple of months when the circumstances change. They're also similar to individual donors. If the same people or the same communities they wanted to support activities with, but you want to change the activities, they're open to that. We're also hearing lots of examples where, business or corporate foundations are feeling a cash crunch themselves and maybe hesitant around dollars, but they have product, whether it's, agricultural products or it's, soaps or it's hand sanitizer or whatever it is that they have. Sort of making that available either for donation or for distribution to be resold by women to make some money back for themselves. And then the last group, and often international NGOs act like donors themselves. And interestingly, I've heard about half the examples of international NGOs behaving well, and being flexible, being understanding, being adaptive, and then half of them staying quite restrictive and quite inflexible in their support, or just asking for things that are crazy at this moment. We heard one story of one of your GWIM colleagues that said, I got asked to go to the office and get a bunch of materials for this group for a project. I was like, I can't even leave my house to get medication, let alone go to the office and get you some materials you need for this project we were working on. So, international NGOs with a long and trusted relationship with are also often quite able to be flexible, but they're a mixed bag in my experience in terms of their flexibility and their adaptability. So these are just some tips and some of what we're seeing in the broader donor space. I'm going to give you sort of just 3 examples. These are from 3 different family foundations that we work with closely. So one of them was super open to rework the activities that we were doing. And I know this is similar to what Sue and Jen have experienced as well, where same beneficiaries, same goals, but we're going to do it in a totally different way because we can't all get together, in a physical space. And so, with them, it was a dialogue of, okay, we talked with the people we were going to be working with. These are the changes we want to make, and this is how we have to rework the budget. And that foundation, gave its stamp of approval, and off we go. Another foundation is very committed to us as an organization. They've been providing support to the accelerator for the last 5 years and a counterpart for 10 years before that. She recognized that we were going to be facing a lot of challenges as well as our partners. So she unrestricted her grant entirely and let us decide how best to spend that money and be supportive of the partners that we work with. And then the third example is a foundation where all the work that was being done was virtual anyway, and we were doing a lot of remote support for a couple of their grantees. So with that one, we ended up not really making any changes. It's going to continue as we were before, but with the caveat that we were checking in with the partners to make sure that now was an appropriate time to be supporting them and to be working with them. So some of the questions that we're asking ourselves are, is this a moment to be pausing and postponing activities entirely? And in some cases that is the answer, just because, the infrastructure we have or the restrictions that are on us or whatever is making it impossible. But then if actually, no, we can meet the original goals of the work that we're trying to do and meet our mission, but just do it in a different way. There's an opportunity there. Are there new needs in the community? And we're going to stay true to our mission, but meet those new needs. These are all questions that we want to be asking ourselves before we start talking with donors and foundations. And you can see my kid coming to get the dog to go walk the dog before she. Sorry about that. You know, these are all questions we're asking ourselves before we're communicating with donors, before we're communicating with partners, and then involving them in the conversation as well, because often they're bringing, you know, their own organizational perspective, their own experience with the current crisis, and helping to inform the possibilities for programming as well. I'm going to pause there for a minute and ask if anybody has any questions or an experience they want to share, you know, from some conversations they're having with their donors that either match up with this or is a different take on what I've presented. Any questions from anybody? And we're going to share these slides with everybody as well, so you guys will get these different examples. And Noor's posted the Council on Foundations letter.
And also the recording will be there too.
Yeah.
I do have the poll, Teresa, too. I don't know if you still want to do that, but I did.
Yeah, we can skip it at the moment. We will do it at the end. So, yeah, Sue, please.
Oops. I wanted to share the experience that I had a couple weeks ago with ExxonMobil. As most of you know, we had planned a week-long alumni skill building workshop for early June. And probably about 5 weeks ago, as soon as Counterpart froze all international travel and we started to see countries lock down on international travel, we decided that that was definitely not going to happen. And rather than postpone it, given what we were hearing from our alumni about their needs to stay connected, really just see one another's faces and hear one another's voices, but then also access resources. Given what we were hearing, we came up with this idea of this virtual peer mentoring program. I put it in an email in about, a paragraph this big, and I sent it to Jim Jones, who is our ExxonMobil Foundation director. And without any questions whatsoever, it was approved. We were able to re-budget to cover this type of activity immediately. There was nothing that we had to submit. There was nothing that we needed to do in terms of re-budgeting. He just said, it's approved, go ahead. So I think you'll find, and Teresa's going to talk more about this, the majority of the people that we work with know what's going on the ground. They know international development, and they're willing to be flexible so that, one, we can stay in business, but two, we can do the business we need to do right now.
Absolutely, that's a great example. And one thing that I'm hearing over and over again is that these kinds of asks and these kinds of relationships really move at the speed of trust. So the more trust that exists between you and whether it's your individual donors, your business donors, government, whatever, these asks and this conversation is definitely much easier the more trust there is in the relationship. When there's lower trust, there may be more questions about, like, well, who did you talk to and where did you get your data from? And give me some examples about how you're working now. And that we can't take that as a criticism or second guessing of us. It's more about building up some more trust that we've been really thoughtful about the changes we want to make and the things that we want to do in our programming.
Teresa, there's a question in the chat for you.
Okay.
Hi, Teresa. Thanks for sharing. Do you have experience not with a specific donor, but with the community? We don't have any donors wanting to spend, but maybe we could ask community people in general to support local causes.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think that, different communities have different cultures of giving. And so I'd encourage you to think about what's the culture and the practice of giving in your community. We heard some great examples in the call on Tuesday because Ramadan is coming up. And because Ramadan's about to start, and the whole practice of charitable giving around Ramadan is something that a couple of the groups were tapping into to get some community members to contribute to packages of support for folks who are less fortunate and less able to provide for themselves, or who had been working in the informal economy and now can't be working. So especially around the community side of things, I'd really encourage, think about what's the culture of giving. What have people done around disasters in the past? What has worked? Or what's a particularly significant event that's coming up that you could use as a hook or a way to rally people around a particular issue? I'd also look at what's going on with your more local, either community foundation or United Way or Red Cross, which might be bringing in money from urban areas or bigger donors or foundations, and then re-granting to more local activities. We're seeing lots and lots of those kinds of funds being set up right now. Does anybody have any experiences, right now with the current crisis around more local and individual giving that people could share?
I think we have one or two, and Jen, correct me, I think we have one or two alumni who have gone to crowdfunding with some success. Do you remember who that was, Jen?
Solar Sisters.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Solar Sisters, one of our alumni posted they did a GoFundMe or one of the crowdfunding online, specifically raising money for the women that they work with around COVID. So, yeah.
Yeah, and one of the groups I work with did a campaign with the diaspora because Ramadan was coming up, and they had some really specific activities they were doing. It was a maker space and lab that was actually printing masks for healthcare workers, and they went out to the diaspora, and then the diaspora, I think they raised $70,000,
wow.
which was really impressive, mostly from Europe and the US, to then fund the ability of their NGO to help health workers. And then another one raised funds also from the diaspora online for putting together care packages for the families that they support, and they use the start of Ramadan as the way to do that.
Teresa, I also coincidentally just this morning on the WLI Facebook page, I posted a call for proposals from Dining for Women. Dining for Women is a group here in the US, but I think they're global actually. And it's a giving circle where women come together and each month and raise money. They have dinner together, Dining for Women. They raise money in these monthly gatherings for a specific organization that is the profiled organization of the month. So every 6 months or so, they choose 6 different organizations, and all the organizations, it can be from any developing country. They need to be addressing women's issues. And they have their call for proposals is out now. I think it's until the end of April. I'll put it right now in the chat. And then if you're selected, you become the charity that is getting featured for these women's groups to raise money for. So let me post that in the chat, but also it's on the Facebook page. That might be another way to tap into some global.
Yeah.
That's great, Jen. I'm conscious of time, so I'm just gonna, breeze through these couple of additional slides that I've got. These are crowdsourced from the funder community of different actions and activities that they're doing to adapt and be more flexible with the organizations that they support. So, you know, some of the things that they're doing are converting their grants that they've made for programs into general operating support. Some of them are adding new funds to grants to be able to fund things so that, you know, organizations can work remotely. You know, not everybody had laptops, not everybody had access to internet, you know, from home. Some of the other things that they're doing is paying for fundraising support for organizations who've lost their traditional donors or no longer can do the public events, the galas or the dinners or the other fundraising activities that they were doing. Some of them, which I'm really proud to see them doing this, is using their voice as donors to advocate with legislators and with government to ensure that nonprofits benefit from the supports to keep the economy going, because we know nonprofits employ a lot of people. They're part of the economic engine of a country, not just businesses. And so ensuring that they can get access to supports from the government as well. And foundations are using their voice to advocate for that. They're you know, setting up rapid response funds. They're supporting personnel costs or making new grants to support emergency assistance to beneficiaries that maybe were part of longer term development projects, but now they've got these emergency needs that need to be supportive. And then, you know, one of the things that we did was we collected stories from nonprofits of donors acting exceptionally and sort of really stepping up and being supportive. And then we collected some not so good stories about foundations, as we said, donors behaving badly. So I just wanted to read, you know, one or two of these because I thought they were particularly inspiring and just gave you an idea of how, you know, some donors are acting really well. You know, today a donor called and said, "Tell me honestly, are you making payroll? How can I help?" And the executive director said, "You know, our cash flow is okay right now, but towards the end of next month, when we don't have our big fundraiser, things are going to get tight." And the donor said, "You call me." And he said, "What you do is really important." And so just that offer to be there when things change or when things are difficult was a huge boost to this executive director. Another, you know, just sent out emails to all their funders and said, "Can you convert our funding to unrestricted?" And, you know, as they were typing up this story, said, "We got a reply," and that donor said yes. And so it's very much worth asking for donors and partners to be flexible right now, because they're more often than not they're going to be and they're going to be helpful. I will say that, you know, there's definitely examples we're seeing where, you know, funders are doing ridiculous things. This is a story that I didn't put in here, but I need to add, which is a donor who had sent money to an organization. The check had been cut, the money was in the bank, and then contacted that organization and said, "Can we have that money back? Because we have this new grant fund and we want to fund more rapid response. So can we have the money back so we can give a grant to somebody else?" So it's not that everybody's acting as well as they could be these days, but I share these more so that we can be thankful that, you know, hopefully we don't have these kind of folks in our life. You know, the ones that are putting out the call for applications for a $200 grant that, you know, takes you 3 days to apply for and 3 pages and attachments. I mean, we're hoping that more and more donors are being more realistic and more supportive of their partners. So any other questions for me? I was going to look at the chat. Any other questions for me or anything that I can provide some insights on from the funders? Or if anybody has any stories of a donor behaving exceptionally or behaving badly that they want to share with each other. All right, well, maybe I'll turn it back over to Jen to kind of bring us all home at the end of the call, and I'm available as a resource. So if there's any questions that come up for you dealing with a donor or whatever, please, reach out to Jen and Sue, and they can loop me in.
Thank you so much,
Hello?
Teresa.
Hello, hello.
Oh, hello.
Taye is here, please.
Okay, Ty, go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I really want to appreciate you, Mama Sue and Jane, for bringing all of us together. Thank you very much. I have a recommendation and also what is going on in my country, especially here in Benin, in Edo State where I live. We have one organization made that came over to do some good donors to us. My 3 communities where I have women on the bee training, they have helped us to, they shared 10 hides to each woman for continuation of what we have started. So I really, people are really working. It's a good thing for whatever it is that they are doing to us. We are really happy. But for the new donors, I have a recommendation. That's a provision of a sustainable and a possible source of water supply, as the construction and the installation of borehole in the farm locations. I think that too will help a long way to support these women in this COVID-19 wahala that we are in. That's my own take on everything that we have been talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Taye. It's good to hear that you're finding that people are really trusting you to do the work and coming together and being flexible in the donations. I think you bring up a really good point. I think I know for me in my community, when I see these organizations doing this frontline support with a skill set or a reach that I don't have, I want to help in whatever way I can. And so I think all over the world we're seeing that, and the better that we get at, I think as organizations, at telling our story and how we're doing that work is important, so that people can understand why it's so important. It also reminds me, on Tuesday we had an interesting issue came up in terms of just being able to explain to your donors what it is that you're doing and what the reality is on the ground. So someone was saying that one of their international donors, if they don't understand why you want to repurpose the funding, maybe doing things like sharing videos and testimonials and stories will help paint the picture for your donors to understand the importance of the work that you're doing.
Okay, thank you. And another thing, please.
Yes.
They have really supported us in training over 200 women.
Wow.
Yes, in the state, over 200. They have really supported us in many ways, providing the hives, training the community women. Some are also not into the bee farming now because of limited resources. So we are looking forward. So we are still doing our own job. We are still going to the communities. So like next week now, despite the COVID problem, we have about 10 people, because in our country, they are saying not more than 20 people should gather together. Now we have limited our training to just 10 persons. We don't mind wherever they gather, they call us, we go there and train them, because people are seeing the result of what we are doing, so they are interested.
Great, thank you. Reaching 200 women, that's amazing. And I think that's also a bit of what Teresa was saying about how having trust with those relationships helps, so you can continue to do the work. Excellent.
Exactly. Thank you very much.
I love Amelia's quote here of Michael Jackson in the chat, that, as Michael Jackson said, make it a better place for you and for me, the entire human race. We could sing it, Amelia. Yeah, great. Great. All right. Anything else before we wrap up? This was really wonderful. I want to thank Teresa for her time and energy. We'll give her a GWIM round of applause. Thank you all so much for taking the time to join us and share. And as you, again, have resources to share, please do share them in the shared drive. I put the link in the chat again. I will send out reminders, and but next week, as I said, Sue will be leading us in a discussion about leading in a time of change. And then in 2 weeks, we'll have a gender expert on talking about gender and COVID-19. You are welcome to come to one or both calls each week. We've had Amelia in on both calls, and I think she'll be able to tell you that each conversation is different. So even if the case is the same and our presenter is the same, the members are different, and so the conversation is different. And so you're always welcome to watch the recordings and see the typed up recommendations. Those will all be in the shared drive, or just come if you can, because we'd love to have you on both calls. Sue, am I forgetting anything?
Yeah. I think I wanted to say how great it is to see some new faces from last week.
Yeah.
And some old faces. Tobin, I haven't seen you in ages. Norma, you almost made me cry when I saw you after 15 years. It's great to have repeat customers, and it's fabulous to see new faces. And I hope those of you who have just joined find this helpful, useful, even if it's only seeing other faces and hearing other voices. But I also hope, of course, the content is helpful to you in some way as well. So if it is something that you're enjoying and finding useful, please spread the word to your GWIM colleagues who may not have joined it, and let them know. And also, for those of you not on the alumni Facebook page, I just sent the name. It's called WLI Alumni Group. You ask to join, and give us your GWIM number, and Jen or I will let you right in. And there's been a lot of nice resources being posted there as well. So another resource to take advantage of.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you all so much. Anything else from anybody? Amelia, yeah?
Yeah, Jen, in Google Drive, you sent us about the link of webinar. I read this one. COVID-19 from sustainability to survivability.
Yes.
When you do the webinar?
That webinar I posted in the shared drive as well as on the Facebook page. That particular one was from another company. It was I had participated in it, and to see if there was valuable information for you all, and I found it really helpful. You can fast forward until about like 11 or 12 minutes in. The beginning is kind of US focused and not really that interesting, but he goes through a 5-step model of how to assess the survivability, the sustainability of your organization, and how to prioritize some of your funding. But Sue and I are talking about perhaps adding a similar topic to our own list of sessions. So we'll let you know if that becomes one of the topics, but feel free to watch that one. And I also included some of the templates that he discusses in the webinar.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Great.
I just request in Facebook, BLI
Facebook.
alumni. Yeah.
Okay, you're not on our Facebook page?
No.
No.
Amelia.
Yeah, just
We gotta
request.
Good, we'll
Just
accept
request
you.
5 minutes ago.
Good, we'll get you. Okay, Ketty, yeah?
I just noticed that Uwin just joined, or she was there.
No, she just joined, so
It's
I chat with her after. It sounds like she missed the call, but we'll chat.
Okay.
Okay, thanks. Okay, everyone, well, have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy, get some sleep, take care of yourself, and we'll see you next
Time to sleep. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I'm so
Mwah.
sleepy.
Bye,
Thank
everybody.
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Hope to see
Bye,
you
Katie.
again.